What's good, everybody? So I'm gonna be doing character breakdowns on the recent Street Fighter patch. However, there is a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not gonna be going through all of the characters, just because I believe that it's fair to everybody else and me personally to only talk about the characters that I'm most familiar with, that ones I've actually like played and got to know, like, how they function, outside of what's, written on paper, because there's only some level of insight you could have of a character if you only watch from the outside of what you've seen that character do, and what you read on paper. You don't know what's on the other side when you're actually functioning the character, like working with the character and actually playing the character. There's some things that you're able to see once you're actually, in playing in game with the character, that you don't get when you are just on the outside watching, like understanding things like how the character like flows in the middle of the match, and the understanding of why some buttons are like better excuse me, why certain tools on the character are good, and a whole bunch of information that's not, just that's not being presented just by watching, a character or reading about them. So Ken is the character that I main. It's the character that, I've been rocking since launch, partially. The other would have to be Ryu. So, but for this video, I'm just going to be discussing about Ken, and right away we're just going to get into the minute changes, the very minor ones. So this button right here, from what I see in the patch notes, from what I'm reading right now, the startup from like frame 2 to 6, I believe the hitbox on him has been increased, and then the ending frames from like 7 to like, or like 4 to 7 or some shit like that, has been decreased. So just some hitbox changes from Ken, nothing too crazy. It's there. And the other thing, if I could pull up these patch notes, well, I already know what's up with Ken, so let's just get right into it, because this is gonna be a big thing that I talk about. Or actually, no, let's break down all these changes, then I'll get down to the big thing. So as you can see here, there's a lot more distance that is spaced in between me and Luke once I'm done with the throw. And we'll get down to throw loops in a second. I just want to get through all the changes. His air Tatsu now has 7 more frames of recovery when you land, and this is something that I actually can like feel. Like there is definitely a bit of a difference there before you can actually like do anything. So I guess it's easier to punish if the opponent is within range to punish it. But aside from that, nothing much has been done with this character, really. Now it's time to discuss what I mean, like what I believe these changes will mean for Ken overall, which not much really, because as much as people like to, hype up like buffs and nerfs and shit, the changes for the most part, like overall in these patches, are not really that significant as much as people think. Now, when I discuss Luke, I will have a few things to say about that, but for somebody like JP, who he's a character I won't really be touching on because I don't play JP. I'm not familiar with him, so I can't tell you really directly as a player. You know, I can't get into the mind state of a JP player to give you an overall like breakdown of like what this means for the character. But OD Amnesia being nerfed, or every version of Amnesia being nerfed, you know, that is significant. And it's not like these changes don't have their own weight. It's just not going to be things that are meta changing, in my personal opinion. Because moving back on the character, I said we were just going to talk about Ken. So the big thing for Ken is the throw loops. And to be honest with you, while this does mean that his offense, when he has you, when he's throwing you, it's definitely changed. It's definitely been cut. It's definitely been shortened in its ability to really, you know, keep offense going. It's been cut in half. But I don't believe this to be an overall, you know, a detrimental change to the character, because he still has things like, well, if we were to just show here, he still has corner carry, and he still has good Oki, like, you know, he still has safe jumps here and there. He still has that Oki. He still has this. So he's still relatively the same character everywhere else. Excuse me. And then out the corner, if you can reach him in time, I guess with a drive rush, you can punish him here. But aside from that, this is the only thing that really will be different, and I don't think it's going to change much out of the character. Now, to get into more get into more detail with the throw loop thing, the reason why throw loops in general are strong in this game is because it keeps the opponent like having to guess. And already there's a lot of things that you have to think about in Street Fighter 6. You know, you have to think about this. You have to think about whether the opponent is going to try to parry you, or think about whether the opponent is reading you. And if you parry, you have to think about, you know, whether, you know, you're about to eat 20% or not, or whether the next move that you throw out, they perfect parry. And it's a lot. It's a lot. And throw loops just multiply that load onto the opponent's head by like 16, because once Ken had you thrown, he would whiff a jab, and then he would be able to either throw you again, or he could just throw out a meaty. He could meaty like his medium or another jab, and then you would have to block. And then let's say you try to tech a throw, you would get hit by these two buttons and some more damage. And then on wake up, he could, you know, he would always end his combos like this, and then meaty, or he would just throw you again. He could time this pretty much and then keep you in a continuous loop. And we've seen we've seen Kakeru getting thrown loop for like an entire round by Phenom. I'm pretty sure it was Phenom. You know, so even pros are getting hit by this. But now that all these options are gone, they don't have to think about whether Ken's gonna shimmy or not, or whether he's gonna fake hitting the low and walking forward and just throwing you again. there's a lot more breathing room to think, because now there's less options that Ken has to mix you with after he's thrown you. Because before then, you were in range to jump, shimmy out, or just throw again, or meaty, which I can't even do it here because it's just not possible anymore. So what are my options with the new throw loops? Well, for one, you can just throw again, because throw loops are still in the game, but they're just not as strong as they used to be, for Ken at least, because I have to manually time the throw, but that's all I can do. Or I could just walk up and throw in a light. Now, where is it? Wake up. Normal moves, common actions, normal throw. I'm still in range to get hit by a light. But let's turn this off. I guess you could do something like that, to where you could pretend to walk up and punish him for that. But it's not something that I believe mentally it's not as intimidating to see Ken walk up, just because of how much distance there already is. Because when you were up close, like right around like here, you would be able to walk forward and then shimmy out, catching Luke whiffing his throw and then getting a full combo out of that shit. But now as the opponent, there's already ground between you and Ken, so mentally it's a lot more there's less load on your mind, because now Ken can't really do that, or he can't pretend to like walk up and throw when he's, and instead he'll just like jump and then catch you whiffing throw. Ken can't do that anymore, so his mix there has been cut in that regard. And then he's able to dash up and you're able to hit him on counter hit, but I mean it's not as good. Well, I guess overall what I'm trying to say is it's definitely not as good as it is before, as intended, of course. I mean, yeah, this is there for that reason. He's not supposed, like, Ken is not supposed to be as strong with these throw loops as, you know, as he was before, clearly. But I don't think this will change Ken that much, really. And the throw loop thing, even though they're there, I don't think they're definitely not as strong as they were before. But overall, I don't think Ken is going to change much as a character, because I believe like his strengths to me were mostly his offensive pressure, obviously the damage that he got out of it, the mix right here. Basically the amount of options he had, and him getting cut just a bit, like in regards to his throw game, it's not as severe as people think, especially since even they still technically exist. They're not as strong as they used to be, but it's still not like he got a whole arm cut off of him. And he's still going to be able to do the same thing that he's always been able to do. Just with a bit less just with a bit more room for the opponent to breathe in. Now, in the next breakdown, I'll be pulling up Ryu and discussing him, and I'll actually mention like a few things about like Ryu and how his throw loop works in comparison. Or actually, let's pull him up. Let's pull him up right now. This won't be a Ryu breakdown, but I believe there is something to like this. This is the closest thing I could do to like make a direct comparison between Ken's old version and his new throw loops, because Ryu has pretty much the same thing. And honestly, I think, as weird as it is, even though they had the same like throw setups, Ryu's is slightly better, as weird as it is for me to say, since, you know, their throws were pretty much the same. But when I'm referring to that, it's because when I say that, it's because like, as you can see, like Ken was able to do this shit, right? But Ryu's are more inconspicuous to really get a read on, because he's able to throw the opponent much faster, like much more sooner than Ken was able to on Wake Up than Ryu can. So as you can see here, see how fast like I'm able to just continuously like keep throwing Luke. Ken was able to do that, but I believe it was actually more readable. You were able to read that much better than what you can do here with Ryu. They both were able to do the same thing. So Ryu is the only one that maintained, like, you know, those loops. I brought him on here to basically like show like this is what Ken used to have, albeit slightly slower, but this is what Ken used to have and shit. And Ryu still has that, which I believe it's fine for Ryu to have still. He doesn't get as much reward out of it than Ken can. Well, I fucked that up. Because Ryu, for the most part, aside from that small little combo that I did, he has a spend meter on most of his combos anyway, when Ken didn't, so that's fine. That's fine for the most part. To end this off right here, I believe Ken will still be seen as like a relatively strong character, even despite the throw loop nerf, because he's still able to do them, but now his options to mix the opponent up afterwards on Wake Up, they've been cut by a good margin. But overall, Ken is just the same character. So next on, we're just going to be moving on to Ryu, so I'll be seeing you in that video.